I hated Thursdays. Not because it was the start of the weekend rush, but because of Jerry, the creepy customer who walked in like clockwork every Thursday at 3 p.m. sharp. I'd been working at this restaurant for about 6 months, and his routine was as predictable as the stale nacho cheese we served. He always ordered the same thing: a Crunchwrap Supreme, a side of cinnamon twists, and a large Mountain Dew. The moment he stepped through the door, my stomach dropped. I couldn't explain it. There was just something unsettling about him. He wore a faded baseball cap pulled low over his forehead, and his eyes were always glued to me. I'd catch him smiling, more like leering, really, while he placed his order.
Hey there, beautiful. What's a girl like you doing in a place like this?
I'd just roll my eyes, trying to smile politely.
Just serving tacos, sir. Just like the last time.
He drolled over me for some time before moving to the restroom. My co-workers, Jess and Mark, would stand behind me, stifling their laughter.
Maybe he takes a big dump every Thursday.
Jess joked one day, nudging Mark. They both chuckled, but I could only manage a weak smile.
You should ask him how his bowels are doing. Very funny.
I muttered, glaring at them. But as annoying as they were, I felt a little comfort in knowing they were there. Over the next weeks, I started noticing a strange pattern during his visits. He would come in every Thursday afternoon, place the same order to go while checking me out, and then using the restroom for a couple of minutes before grabbing his order and leaving. One Thursday, after he left the restroom, the bathroom light would flicker momentarily. At first, I brushed it off as faulty wiring. Taco Bell wasn't exactly known for its maintenance, but as the flickering continued, I felt my curiosity grow. One Thursday, the light flickered longer than usual. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. When the shift ended, I mentioned it to Mark.
Hey, can you check the bathroom light? It's been acting weird.
He waved me off. Just a loose bulb. I'll look at it later. But it bugged me. The next day, I asked our maintenance guy, Dave, to take a peek. He grumbled, but reluctantly agreed.
Yeah, probably just a wiring issue, Ella,
he said, scratching his head while inspecting the light fixture.
But I'll check it out for you.
After a few minutes of poking around, he said,
You're right about one thing. This Taco Bell has some odd features. Look at this air vent.
He pointed up to a vent close to the ceiling, nearly hidden from view. It was unusual for a place like this, but I didn't think much of it.
Is it broken?
I asked, squinting.
Nope, just strange. Not sure why it's here. Could be some leftover from the old hotel they built over.
I shrugged, not giving it much thought until later that night. My curiosity piqued. I decided to check it out after closing hours. I climbed up on a chair, unscrewed the vent cover, and peered inside. That's when I saw it, a tiny red blinking light. At first, I thought it was part of the ventilation system, but something about its positioning struck me as odd. My heart raced. I pulled out my phone and snapped a picture, then decided to climb back down. I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to know what it was. That night, after I got home, I replayed the day's events in my mind. Why did I feel like I was being watched? The following Thursday, I approached the vent again, my heart pounding. I unscrewed it and looked inside, but the light was gone. Confused, I checked the camera feed in the kitchen. Just then, the familiar voice broke my concentration.
Hey there, gorgeous,
the creep said, stepping up to the counter. I forced a smile.
Hi. What can I get you today?
As he placed his order, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread. As he left for the bathroom, I was overwhelmingly compelled to follow him. I glanced at the bathroom door, and for the first time, I felt a strange urge to see what he was doing in there. After he left, while Eve teasing me and making some comments about my body, I couldn't ignore the growing sense of unease. I decided to grab a ladder and check the vent again. I climbed up and unscrewed it, but I didn't find just the light. I found a hidden camera aimed toward the toilet. Horror washed over me. It had an SSD card attached, which I pulled out. I informed Jess, who brought her laptop. What I saw made my blood run cold. There were many people, including us, who were captured, various parts of us visible. He had meticulously recorded his victims. I felt sick to my stomach. I immediately called the police, my voice trembling as I reported the situation. They reached out, and together we made a plan. When he arrived the following Thursday, I could barely keep it together. He followed his ritual, and then I watched from behind the counter as the police rushed in as soon as he emerged from the washroom. He was arrested. They searched his apartment, heart pounding until I got the call. He had over 8 weeks worth of private videos of various customers. I felt sick as I realized how an unassuming creep of a customer could pull something like this. I just couldn't continue with the job and left soon. I never believed in ghosts. I didn't believe in much of anything, really. So when I was offered the night manager job at the Taco Bell in the small, forgotten town, I didn't pay any attention to the rumors. I was assigned one goal: control the night staff, who seemed to talk about strange happenings at the Taco Bell. The place was built on the site of the old Grand Oaks Hotel, which collapsed 50 years ago, killing dozens during a New Year's Eve party. People whispered that it was haunted, but I figured it was just small town talk. My first night there, the crew was small, just me, Connor, and Lacey. Connor was a scrawny 19-year-old, clearly nervous about working the night shift. Lacey had been there for a few months and seemed tired, like she'd seen enough. Connor kept glancing at me. "You know about this place, right?" "Know what?" I asked, barely looking up from my checklist. "It's, haunted," he said, lowering his voice like it was some big secret. "Haunted? Seriously?" I shook my head. "Come on, man, you don't actually believe that stuff." He swallowed. "People see things, hear things, especially at night." I shrugged. "It's an old building, that's all. The wind creaks, the pipes knock, and people start imagining things." Lacey mumbled, almost too low to hear.
It's more than that.
Before I could ask what she meant, the headset crackled. Static at first, but then I heard something beneath it. A whisper. I glanced at the cameras. No cars in the drive-thru. Nobody near the speaker. "Probably interference," I said, though even I didn't sound convinced. Connor paled.
That's how it starts.
I frowned. "What?"
The whispers. It always starts with the whispers. Then, the smoke.
I snorted. "Smoke? Really?" But as soon as I said it, I smelled it. Faint but unmistakable, like burnt wood or cigarettes. I walked around checking the equipment. Everything was off. Nothing malfunctioning. "The building's just old," I said, trying to ignore the uneasy feeling creeping into my gut. "Let's get back to work." That night dragged on. The drive-thru stayed empty. The dining area was quiet, and I could tell Connor and Lacey were jumpy. Around midnight, I noticed the security cameras flicker. I leaned in, watching the screen. First, they went grainy. Then, some flies arrived particularly close to the camera. Then, as crazy as it sounds, the flies formed a face, distorted, stretched, almost unrecognizable. It was gone in a flash. Connor saw my reaction. "You saw it, didn't you? I saw an old granny once." I shook my head. "It's just a glitch." Lacey's voice was barely above a whisper.
It's them.
I sighed. "Who?"
The people who died here.
She said, not even looking at me. "Enough," I snapped. "We're not doing this. No more ghost stories. Let's finish up." That is when suddenly I heard sounds, like someone was running back in the kitchen. I paused and listened carefully. There were just the three of us, and no customers. The two just stood paralyzed, clearly hearing the same sound too. "Are you guys playing some tricks to scare the new managers away?" They did not respond, so I went ahead towards the sounds of someone running.
They usually don't like to be disturbed when the kids are playing.
I paused. They were trying to rattle me, and somehow I felt that I couldn't let them succeed. If somehow I left this job, I wouldn't find another for months. I just couldn't.
Just leave them. They can get violent if bothered during their kitchen time.
You know what? You come with me. And Connor, you too. They exchanged glances before carefully coming after me as we went inside. Suddenly, the sound stopped. I turned all the lights on, but there was nobody. I couldn't understand how they were doing it, but there was no one who was running in the kitchen. That is when suddenly the fryer malfunctioned. Oil started pouring out, catching a small fire. Connor screamed from the back, and I rushed in with a fire extinguisher to help. We barely got it under control, but that is when the smell of smoke filled the kitchen. But it wasn't from the fire. It was like the smell of rotten flesh mixed with smoke. I was too stunned to know how to respond. They couldn't have done this, but my rational mind still couldn't fathom what was happening. But that is when the boxes started falling. Heavy ones, stacking too high to fall on their own, but swiftly moving across like an invisible force was pulling them. They nearly hit Connor twice, and I knew it wasn't just bad luck. We ran out and closed the door behind. Suddenly, all the sounds stopped, except for the running of footsteps. Connor picked his bag and left immediately. Lacey's feelings were mutual.
I have seen some sick things here, but never that. This isn't just some haunting. They are trying to kill us, and I am done. I had to pay my grandma's bills, so I stuck for so long. But I'm not paid enough for this shit.
Lacey left as well, handing me the keys and quitting. I took a few minutes to come out of my shock. I still had to lock the place. But as it dawned on me how alone I was at this place, the power went out. No backup lights, nothing. The whole place was plunged into darkness. I grabbed my phone. No signal. I reached for the emergency flashlight, but it flickered weakly, barely casting any light. As I turned, through the flickering of the lights, I saw them. Figures, pale and faded, drifting through, now outside the kitchen as well. They were dressed in old clothes, like from the 1920s. There was a woman in a gown, her face twisted backwards. Her eyes met mine, hollow and empty. She reached out with a trembling hand, her fingers too long, her mouth moving but making no sound. My heart pounded. Then, a child started moving towards me as well, wailing. Then, an old man. Soon, they were all drawn to me. I backed up, ran for the door, but it wouldn't budge. I was trapped. Panicking, I grabbed a chair and threw it at the nearest window. The glass shattered, and I scrambled through, cutting my arms on the way out. I didn't stop running until my legs gave up. I was sick in bed for the next 5 days, and then I quit. Working the late shift at Taco Bell isn't generally exciting. Still, nothing could have prepared us for what would happen on that Tuesday evening. It began like every other night, quiet, with a few patrons meandering in at their own pace, orders as monotonous as the menu itself. I was working the register, taking orders while keeping an eye on the clock, ticking down the hours to the end of my shift. It was around 10 p.m. when the doors swung open, and 3 rowdy teenagers came rushing in, laughing and pushing each other as they threaded their way to the counter. They were boisterous, almost to the point of being obnoxious, but harmless. They filed behind an older woman who seemed transfixed by her phone. The line crept forward, and the boys became restless. One of them, a tall kid with a shock of blue hair, brushed past the woman, making his way to the front.
Hey, no cutting.
She snapped, looking up from her screen, her eyes narrowing. The boy shrugged, clearly unbothered. Chill, lady, we're just trying to get some food. The tension was immediate and seemed to thicken the air. I stood there frozen, still over the register, unsure what to do next.
You have to wait in line like everyone else.
The woman continued, moving closer to the boy. Her voice came with a hard edge that made you stand up just a little straighter. The teenager rolled his eyes. However, before he could utter a word, his pals followed suit. They formed a small blockade for the woman and the counter, smirking along with the accusing group. That is when things went from bad to worse. The female pulled out her purse and with one swift motion produced a pepper spray canister. I barely had a moment to process what was happening as the woman sprayed it directly into the face of the blue-haired boy. Chaos broke out. The boy screamed and clutched at his eyes as his friends stumbled backward, coughing and gagging as the spray hit them too. The woman continued spraying, her face a mask of rage, without stopping until the canister was empty. "Security! Somebody call the police!" I shouted, finally breaking out of my trance. I dialed 911, my fingers shaking as they pushed the buttons on my phone. Across from me, people started screaming, while others ran out of the door and the rest stood filming on their phones. She didn't let it end there. She started to scream at the boys, mashing together curses and accusations. The manager, Tony, a massive guy that has been hiding from everyone in the back, rushed out to try and somewhat put a damper on this situation. "Ma'am, you need to leave, now!" Tony barked, positioning himself between her and the horde of teenagers she so viciously attacked. But she was long gone with reason.
They deserve it. They can't just do whatever they want. I know my rights. And if you come any closer, I'll spray you too.
She screamed, her face flushed with rage, her hand still on the can, ready to spray. Within minutes, the police arriving not in the least to calm the mayhem. They cuffed the woman, reading her rights as she continues screaming. The teenagers were taken outside, paramedics attending to their burning eyes and reddened skin. I stand in my store, at the back of the counter. My mind is racing, trying to keep up with what had just gone on. The smell of pepper spray hangs heavily in the air, leaving a burning ache and itching eyes. I couldn't help but imagine the female face raging in fury, or the cries from the boy. They took all of them in, and I spoke my account as clearly as possible, my voice shaking. They told us that the woman was going to be charged with felony assault. It was still so much like a fantasy that an innocent misunderstanding over cutting in line would suddenly take this violent turn. Just after I walked out as my shift ended, it was cool outside from all the heated activity inside, but how quickly things spiraled out of control, impatience to an extreme reaction. The incident stayed with me way after that night, sort of being a grim reminder of how unpredictable people could be. Working at Taco Bell wasn't ever the same. Every customer walking through the door was a potential threat, every shift a test of my ability to stay calm in the face of the unexpected. And then, over the following weeks, the tale of the pepper spraying begins to spread, transforming our quiet Taco Bell into an institution in the community. Strangers began to enter, hoping to glimpse some evidence of the drama that did in fact occur there, talking to each other in hushed tones as they wait in line. And I sit there, contemplating whether any of them carried a canister of pepper spray in their bags, just waiting for an excuse to unleash mayhem.